Hi everyone. At the dawn of the 20th century, a new kind of warship sailed from French shipyards, one that would bridge the gap between education and combat, tradition and innovation. The Jeanne d'Arc, launched in 1899, was no ordinary cruiser. She was the first French warship specifically designed as a training vessel for naval cadets, yet built with the firepower and armor of a frontline combat ship. While many cruisers of her time focused solely on speed, guns, or imperial presence, Jeanne d'Arc combined all these traits with a deeper purpose, to shape the future of the French Navy. She featured powerful main guns, protected decks, and long-range capability, but also classrooms, expanded living quarters, and the ability to host extended voyages around the globe. The Jeanne d'Arc was conceived at a time when naval doctrines were shifting rapidly. Designed by naval architect Émile Bertin, one of the most influential figures in French naval engineering, the cruiser represented a bold fusion of combat power and educational utility. At over 147 meters in length, Jeanne d'Arc was a large protected cruiser, displacing over 11,000 tons. Her design featured a protected armored deck, rather than a full-side armor belt, a hallmark of the armored deck cruiser concept. This deck sloped downward at the edges, providing vital protection for engines and magazines while saving weight. The ship's main battery included two 194mm guns in single turrets fore and aft, supported by 14 138mm guns in casemates and on deck. These were supplemented by smaller quick-firing weapons and torpedo tubes. One of the most innovative aspects of Jeanne d'Arc's design was her internal layout. Unlike standard cruisers, she incorporated large spaces for classrooms, study areas, and cadet quarters. Her propulsion system consisted of three vertical triple-expansion steam engines fed by 36 boilers, delivering over 17,000 horsepower and pushing the ship to speeds up to 21 knots. The Jeanne d'Arc, named after the legendary French warrior Saint Joan of Arc and affectionately known as La Jeanne, was ordered on December 28, 1895, from the Arsenal de Toulon. The ship was laid down with a very specific mission in mind, to serve as a fully operational warship while simultaneously acting as a floating naval academy. This dual-purpose role had never before been attempted on such a scale in the French fleet. Launched on June 8, 1899, Jeanne d'Arc took to the waters without her engines installed. After some time, she was finally ready for sea trials on March 1, 1901. However, these trials quickly exposed significant issues. The boiler rooms were poorly ventilated, and the insulation was inadequate. Temperatures inside the boiler rooms soared to 65 degrees Celsius, 149 degrees Fahrenheit, creating an uncomfortable and unsafe environment. Additionally, the feed pumps often failed due to the feed water being too hot, a result of the condensers overheating. Another round of trials in April revealed further mechanical issues, with piston rings malfunctioning in all three engines. Despite these setbacks, Jeanne d'Arc was officially commissioned on March 10, 1903. Still struggling with persistent boiler issues, she was placed in reserve, only to be recommissioned for another round of trials. Unfortunately, these trials proved to be unsuccessful, and the ship was once again decommissioned for repairs on November 15. It wasn't until May 1905 that Jeanne d'Arc was recommissioned for further trials. On May 26, 1906, Captain Émile Guéprat took command of Jeanne d'Arc, and she was assigned to the Mediterranean Fleet, where she became the flagship of the Light Squadron. After stopping at Tangiers and Gibraltar, Jeanne d'Arc joined the main fleet on July 12 for the annual Grand Maneuvers, a major naval exercise that ran until the 28th. During these operations, she wasn't just present, she was making her mark as a key player in the French Navy's growing ambitions. On September 16, Jeanne d'Arc took part in a fleet review in Marseille, held in honor of President Armand Fallières. This event commemorated the laying of the first stone of the Rove Canal Tunnel, a major project linking Marseille to the Rhône River. It was another moment where La Jeanne proudly represented the modern naval force of France. The ship's schedule didn't slow down. The next month, she made a port call in Bizerta, French Tunisia. In 1907, she visited Morocco, Algeria, and Cherbourg, before heading to Brest in June for maintenance, including a full cleaning of her hull. By July 20, she was back in Toulon, ready for more service. But early the following year, tragedy struck. Just after departing Gibraltar on February 12, 1908, a boiler exploded aboard the ship. 5 crew members lost their lives, and 3 others suffered severe burns. Jeanne d'Arc reached Brest safely 3 days later, but the incident marked a turning point. On April 15, she was officially placed in reserve, beginning an extensive transformation to become a training ship for naval cadets, a role she was destined to fulfill. By May 20, 1911, Jeanne d'Arc was recommissioned and joined the 3rd Division of the Reserve Squadron. Less than a year later, on May 1, 1912, she was transferred to the Atlantic Schools Division, launching into her new career as a seagoing academy. She began a long training voyage through the Atlantic, Mediterranean, and Baltic Seas, preparing future officers for the challenges ahead. Her mission would take her even farther. In 1914, Jeanne d'Arc continued her training cruise, passing through the Suez Canal and venturing into the Indian Ocean, proving that even in her second life, she remained a true ocean-going warrior. During the First World War, the Jeanne d'Arc took part in a wide range of important operations across different theaters of conflict. At the start of the war, she rejoined the Northern Squadron on August 1, 1914, as France mobilized its naval forces. Assigned to the 1st Division of the 2nd Light Squadron, her first mission came just days after Germany declared war. Jeanne d'Arc was deployed to patrol the Western English Channel, where she hunted for blockade runners and contraband ships. While on patrol, Jeanne d'Arc spotted a German U-boat preparing to attack. Standard procedure? Evasive maneuvers. Due to mechanical failures, the ship couldn't turn properly. Instead of executing a careful zigzag, the cruiser went into an uncontrolled, wide circle. The German submarine crew, expecting a standard evasion pattern, fired their torpedoes and missed completely. The erratic, wobbling path of Jeanne d'Arc made her accidentally unpredictable. The U-boat, assuming the French were using some brilliant new tactic, broke off the attack. Jeanne d'Arc limped back to port, her crew celebrating their brilliant seamanship. But her mission soon shifted east. When the Dardanelles campaign began in February 1915, reinforcements were urgently needed in the eastern Mediterranean, and Jeanne d'Arc was transferred to the 3rd Squadron in March. Her first task? Escorting troop convoys to Mudros, a key Allied base near the Gallipoli front. By late April, the French launched diversionary landings on the Anatolian side of the Dardanelles, while the British attacked the Gallipoli Peninsula. Jeanne d'Arc supported these landings, coming under fire in the process. On April 26, she was hit by 2 150mm shells. One caused damage to a sponson, started a fire, and wounded several sailors. The second shell failed to explode and was safely thrown overboard. Shortly after, Jeanne d'Arc was promoted to flagship of the 3rd Squadron, carrying the flags of prominent French admirals such as Louis d'Artigues du Fournet, Dominique Marie Gachet, and Frédéric Moreau, serving in this role until March 30, 1916. During this period, she was based in Port Said, Egypt, where she helped enforce the Allied blockade along the Levantine and Aegean coasts, then under Ottoman control. She played an active role in the occupation of Ruad and Castlereazo Islands in 1915, and even took part in shore bombardments, including striking German consulates in Alexandretta and Kafir. By the end of March 1916, Jeanne d'Arc was withdrawn from the Levant and returned to France for a major overhaul. Once the refit was completed in January 1917, she was reassigned to the 4th Light Squadron in the West Indies, continuing to serve in distant waters. In 1918, with the war nearing its end, Jeanne d'Arc returned to France and was placed in reserve, her crew reduced, but her legacy as a versatile and resilient warship firmly secured. After the war, the Jeanne d'Arc returned to what she was originally meant for, training the next generation of French naval officers. In August 1919, following a post-war refit, she was recommissioned once again as a training cruiser. Over the next decade, she became a familiar sight on the seas, setting out on 9 long training cruises. These journeys typically began in Brest, departing in September or October and lasting until the following July, offering invaluable real-world experience to young naval cadets. One particularly charming moment in her post-war career occurred on April 30, 1925, while she was docked in Piraeus, Greece. Some of the French sailors took part in a friendly football match against Olympiakos FC. Little did they know, this would go down in history as the very first friendly match ever played by Olympiakos. The French lost 6-0, but it's safe to say they helped make football history in the process. During her final cruise in 1927 to 1928, Jeanne d'Arc was under the command of a rising naval officer, François Darlan, who would later become a major figure in French naval history. When she returned home in 1928, her active service came to a close. She was replaced by the newer cruiser Edgar Quinet and placed in reserve. In 1930, she was renamed Jeanne d'Arc II, as a brand new training cruiser was under construction to carry on the legacy. Finally, in 1933, she was officially stricken from the Naval Register. On March 21, 1934, she was condemned, and a few months later, on July 9, the once proud cruiser was sold for scrap, bringing an end to her long and distinguished story. The Jeanne d'Arc of 1899 was far more than just a warship. She was a symbol of transition, from the age of imperial conflicts to the new world of global training and diplomacy. As the first French ship built specifically as a training cruiser, Jeanne d'Arc left a lasting mark, one that lived on in her successors and in the proud traditions of the French Navy. Thanks for watching.